In prison, I got a journeyman electrical license, which basically guaranteed that I'd be able to get a job when I got out. Because a lot of people don't know how licensing works. But say I need to go into your house and make modifications, I need to rewire something, and I need to pull a permit, I can't just do that as some guy off the street. Instead, I have to have a master's electrical license, basically showing that I have a really good grasp of the code. Once that permit is pulled, though, I don't need a master's license to run the job. I only need a journeyman's. Because, again, I need to have a good enough grasp of the code to make sure I'm not doing anything crazy, but I'm not doing new calculations. All that was done when the permit was pulled. In every prison where I was, there were two main educational opportunities. There were GED classes or pre-GED classes, basically all these things working you up to getting your GED, and then there were vocational classes. Those might be cooking classes or electrical or HVAC or plumbing, but the problem was that just gave you a piece of paper that says, hey, I know how to do electrical work. The problem is a lot of guys would get that piece of paper, they'd go on a job site, and the boss would say, like, man, you can't even hold your lineman's right. Like, bro, I'm not giving you a job. You got a piece of paper that's meaningless. But at some of those institutions, in addition to the vocational class, there were vocational apprenticeships, which were state-run things. This is how you get your license. Basically, you have to get your on-the-job hours, you have to get your in-the-class hours, and then you take a test. So it was during COVID that my electrical instructor, who was one of the best people I met the whole time I was in prison, was like, bro, we're going to get you this license. So he managed to get the DPR guy, the guy who does the licensing test, into the prison during COVID. He basically snuck him into a prison to make sure that I could take my test so that I could get my journeyman's license. And I had gotten all my classroom hours when I was in the apprenticeship, and I got my on-the-job hours because I was working on maintenance. But one of the problems, and this happened to me too, is yeah, I got my license. Yeah, I knew the code well enough to be able to take the test and get my license, but I still wasn't exposed to a lot of things. I'd done a couple things in the class. Actually, I wasn't even allowed to take the class technically because I'd already taken another trade, but I did a couple things in the apprenticeship. I learned doing electrical. Basically, I was working in a prison. We weren't doing any residential work. So outside of that classroom, we had a couple projects during the apprenticeship. I didn't learn any residential stuff. I was only working on commercial properties. And it's funny because the only electrical work I've done since I've gone home, it's basically been favors for friends or people being like, hey man, I really need help with this. And I can do it as side work. But for the most part, if I'm okay and I have time, I'm just going to do it for free. And on one of those jobs, I ran into a problem that was pretty much unique to a residential application. And I felt like such an idiot because I could not figure it out. I was going back and forth and back and forth. When I finally figured it out, I was like, oh, this is obvious. Like, it's just theory, but I hadn't seen it. And anybody who's done residential wiring for years would have known what it was. So even though I had a license, that did not make me the best electrician.